let us look at who is going to be actually in charge of the management of this forest or any of the tree planting that we are going to do. I also raised the issue that we need to lay emphasis on environmental studies, whether it's environmental law, whether it's environmental civic education within our schools. I believe that can come into this bill. I also raised that even when we are seriously considering passing this bill and our counties are what is most important, I am also suggesting that Honorable Haji would look at if we can create environmental regional bodies that would be interlinked and interfaced from one county to the other, for the simple reason that what flows, for example, from Kisii County very easily moves to Migori County and very easily goes to Homa Bay County, because we are all county neighborhoods. And my suggestion is that if there was a way, we make sure that the trees that would recommend to be planted in these areas are trees that are going to be sustainable. The other point that I wanted to really suggest, Mr. Speaker, onto this bill is that last year there was an issue that I brought a motion onto the floor of this House, and I said that I think it's high time that we create botanical gardens within our counties, either within our municipalities or townships. I also made a suggestion that these botanical gardens would then would be allocated land by the county governments, where we plant trees who have got medicinal values, that have got general values, whether they were food. There were some trees which I remember in the county of Kisii, where I grew up, would be utilized to make sure that they cover for the sun or when we planted coffee and tea. And those trees, some research needs to be done so that we can have a proper ecosystem designed to come up with environmental planning and arrangement for all these trees that we are going to plant. The other issue I said, Mr. Speaker, and I wanted Honorable Haji to also realize that there's a recommendation. Actually, somebody called me last night and said, could you ask the senator so that we can also start planting trees around road reserves, so that we can then have some of the areas which are left bare and they're all dusty, we do that. Somebody else made a recommendation, and I totally agree with it, Mr. Speaker, and that is that we need to look at what we have done to our schools. I remember when I was going to school as a young man, we were planting trees and keeping the compound clean and making sure that the vegetation looked nice and all that. I believe this is something that we can bring back. For some of you who are older, remember we used to have Senator Mungatana, what was known as the 4K clubs, where young students who are in primary, secondary schools can be taught and educated what the value of having a good environment and planting our beautiful African trees, so that then we can maintain our indigenous plants, trees, and all that is helping our community. The other, maybe the last point I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, is that I saw, if you look at what Honorable Haji has tabled out here, he said, we shall promote the planting of trees in all public land vested in the county governments. We shall ensure that all trees that are felled for the implementation of any county project are relocated to an area designated by the service, and any person who harvests a tree shall replace the trees under the direction and in those areas that have been designated by the service. Mr. Speaker, actually, I think you just went and picked this from the template. It used to exist during the 1970s, the 1980s, and then as usual, we then came into the way we are having this bad behavior. We started cutting trees within our townships. We made sure that we were making sure that our towns are left bare and the municipal areas and all that. I would like to say that this bill encourages me because, as I've said, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this House, that the county government of Kisii has given the Chinese company rights to cut trees within Kisii unabated. They don't replant, they don't ask anybody. You just see lorries which are picking trees and you are told they are going to China. I believe this bill will stop such activity, And this bill will make county governments become responsible. And I believe that this will make our country become a green country. I hope we'll adopt green technology on all our spheres, Mr. Speaker, because at some point we are going to have ourselves to start looking at our behavior. Why is it that we are cutting trees? And yet, Mr. Speaker, I believe that it's easier for us to use our sun so that we can solarize our schools, this National Assembly, all the big institutions in our republic. And there's a research which is done by the World Bank that if we solarize even just 30% of our institutions, the Kenyan government would end up saving something like 50 billion US shillings. I mean Kenya shillings. I believe that this is the direction to go. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for you particularly having brought this bill, and we will support it. And I am sure that many of our colleagues are seized of this matter. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Onyonka. Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana, Bwana Spika, kwa kuleta sheria hii, hoja hii ya kuhusu mazingira katika bunge letu la Senate. Mimi nasimama kuunga mkono kwa dhati hii sheria, Bwana Spika, ambayo wewe mwenyewe Senator jirani Abdul Haji umeileta kwa bunge letu la Senate. Mimi naunga mkono sana, haswa kipengele cha 6, ambacho kipengele hichi, Bwana Spika, kinasema ya kwamba bunge letu la Senate tukishapitisha sheria hii, itakuwa kwamba kila mwaka kwa wiki moja tutakuwa na wiki ya kupanda miti. Kutoka tarehe 5 mwezi wa 3 kila mwaka mpaka tarehe 5th of March mpaka tarehe 21 ya mwezi huo, tutakuwa na nafasi ya kupanda miti kama Wakenya. Na mimi, Bwana Spika, nataka kuchukua mazungumzo yangu kutoka pale seneta mwenzangu wa Kisii, Bwana Onyonka, alipoachilia. Bwana Spika, tukipitisha hii sheria ya kwamba kila mtu anajua ya kwamba kila mwaka kuna siku ambazo tumeziweka katika mwezi wa 3 ambapo sote wa Kenya tutakuwa tunapanda miti. Bwana Spika, tutatengeneza culture ambayo itatuingia katika akili zetu ya kwamba lazima tutunze mazingira yetu. Bwana Spika, Mheshimiwa Onyonka amezungumza kuhusu 4K clubs. Tulipokuwa watoto na tulipokuwa kwa mashule yetu, tulikuwa tunaambiwa lazima tujenge na tutunze mazingira yetu, na tulikuwa tunafunzwa katika hivyo clubs ya kwamba miti hii inafanya namna hii, mti huu ni wa dawa, mti huu ni wa kivuli, mti huu ni wa kutunza maji yasipite pande ile. Tulikuwa tunafunzwa mambo mengi, jinsi ya kupanda miti katika hivyo vilabu. Bwana Spika, miaka imepita, watoto hawafundishwi tena mambo haya. Bwana Spika, mimi mwenyewe nilipokuwa mdogo nilisoma Mombasa RG Ngala Primary School, mahali ambapo baba alikuwa anafanya kazi. Kisha nikaenda Ngao Primary School, Tana River, Arap Moi Primary School, Ngao. Bwana Spika, mti ambao niliupanda miaka ile katika primary school yangu, mpaka leo mti ule upo. Na nilipokwenda high school, Lance High School, Bwana Spika, tulifundishwa ya kwamba huwezi kukanyaga manyasi, na mtu yoyote ambaye amekuwa amefinywa, ameingizwa hizo akili, huwezi kumpata kwamba anakanyaga manyasi. Mr. Speaker, hata mimi leo nikiona mahali pako green, mimi kukanyaga pale inakuwa ni ngumu sana. Hata kama watu wanapita, mimi hutafuta namna ya kupita nje, kwa sababu ya ile culture ambayo nimejifundisha nilipokuwa mdogo. Sasa sisi tukiweka national culture ya kwamba Wakenya wote ikifika mwezi wa 3 tutakuwa sote tunaenda kupanda miti kwa wiki mzima. County government zetu tukifika mwezi wa 3 tarehe 15 sote tunaenda kupanda miti. Bwana Spika, hili litapeleka tabia mpya ambayo itatusaidia kutunza mazingira yetu. Bwana Spika, hii ni kitu ambayo tunataka kuingiza kwa watoto wetu. Manake Bwana Spika, leo hii tukiwa tunatembea na watoto wangu tu ambao nimewazaa, ukichukua kikombe cha plastiki ama chupa ya plastiki, hata mtoto mdogo, na ujaribu kutupa, watoto wanakuambia, baba, hiyo ni tabia mbaya. Ni kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu wamefundishwa mambo ya kuweka mazingira safi. Sasa hii sheria, Bwana Spika, tunataka tuipitishe hapa, tuiunge mkono, na katika miaka yote Bwana Spika itakumbukwa ya kwamba sheria ya Mheshimiwa Seneta Abdul Haji ndiyo tunaifuatizia. Kila mwaka tukienda kufanya hiyo kazi, tutakuwa tunakukumbuka Mheshimiwa. Hii ni kitu kikubwa sana ambacho umepitisha, na mimi nimefurahi kukuunga mkono. Bwana Spika, ukienda katika kila county, haswa county, mimi nazungumzia county yangu ya Tana River, unakuta kuna nafasi ambazo magavana wameweka miti na wameitengeza ili wananchi waweze kupata nafasi ya kupumzika pale ama kujivinjari. Lakini Bwana Spika, kitu ambacho kimenishangaza sana ni kwamba magavana wa kaunti zetu, sehemu hiyo ambayo wameijenga, wamepanda miti, imefungwa. Watu hawaendi huko kujivinjari ama kupumzika tena. Mahali pale Hola katika Tana River County, Bwana Spika, ambapo miti imepandwa ili mazingira yawe mazuri, hakuna watu wanakubaliwa kuingia. Wanasema ukiingia unaenda kuharibu. Sasa mimi nashangaa, haya mazingira ambayo tunataka kuyajenga, ni kwa nini yasiwe wazi kwa wananchi? Toka Tana River kuja hapa Nairobi, Bwana Spika, kuna hapa mahali inaitwa Uhuru Gardens. Uhuru Gardens, Bwana Spika, ilikuwa ni mahali pazuri sana ambapo wananchi wengi ambao wanaishi katika sehemu hiyo walikuwa wanaenda kupumzika. Uhuru Gardens, mahali watu wengi watakwambia walienda wakapata wachumba wao kule, na saa nyingine hata wakafanya sherehe za kuoana sehemu hiyo. Bwana Spika, Uhuru Gardens sasa imekuja ikachukuliwa na serikali hiyo, na pesa za wananchi hao ndio zimejenga pale mahali pakubwa pa masherehe. Sasa imekuwa ni sherehe ya president peke yake, hakuna mwananchi ambaye anakubaliwa kuingia pale. Ni kwa nini hizi environment ambazo tunazitumia tunataka kuzijenga zisifaidi wananchi wa kawaida? Ukiangalia Tana River wamepafunga kabisa pale mahali ambapo pana miti Hola. Hapa Nairobi Uhuru Gardens imefungwa. Mwananchi wa kawaida ambaye alikuwa anaishi sehemu za Langata, hakuna mahali pa kujivinjari. Ukifika pale unaona mageti makubwa, askari wengi, hakuna mahali pa kujivinjari. Paka siku ambao rais anaenda huko pengine kufanya sherehe, Madaraka Day, Jamhuri Day, watu wanaingizwa alafu wakitoka basi nafungwa tena. Na zamani Bwana Spika ilikuwa ni mahali pako wazi. Kila mtu anapata nafasi ya kujivinjari na kufurahia mazingira yetu. Hapa Nairobi Bwana Spika, watu wengi wanaishi kwa nyumba ndogo apartments. Sasa ukifunga Uhuru Park, na mimi sijui hawa watu wanafikirianga namna gani Bwana Spika. Ukifunga ile Uhuru Park hapa imekuwa shida, wamewachilia pande moja. Uhuru Gardens wameifunga kabisa. Na sisi wengine tulipokuwa wadogo, Bwana Speaker, na tulipokuwa university, tulikuwa hatuwezi kupeleka hawa mama tumeoa, tulikuwa hatuwezi kuwapeleka madate nje. Tulikuwa tunanua njugu, unaenda mahali kama Uhuru Gardens, unakaa kando na unaeleza na ukiingiza mtu box. Bwana Speaker, wamefungia. Sasa watoto hawa wanatafuta wachumba zao ni kusimama mabarabarani. Hata maajali yanaongezeka hapo Langata Road, Bwana Speaker. Hii kitu lazima iangaliwe tena. Sehemu zetu za mazingira ambazo ni za open zifunguliwe, wananchi waweze kufurahia Nairobi, kufurahia Tana River. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono, Bwana Speaker, huu mswada, na naomba maseneta wote waunge mkono huu mswada ili tupitishe kwamba kila mwaka tarehe 15 tuweze kusherehekea kazi ya kupanda miti kwa wiki moja. Ninashukuru sana, asante kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Beatrice.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the Environment Law Amendment Bill 2024. And from the word go, Honorable Speaker, I want to support and really congratulate Senator Haji for this amendment. Honorable Speaker, when we talk about the environment, we are basically talking about our future. I look up at the public gallery and I see young Kenyans seated there. But Honorable Speaker, if we don't preserve, if we don't protect, if we don't expand and take care of our environment, we will literally have killed the future of the young Kenyans that are seated on the gallery today. Honorable Speaker, environment speaks to restoring land. And land, Honorable Speaker, as I've said, is our future. That with a good environment, we are able to really do away with certain disasters that we have in the world today. And in our country, in the recent past, we have seen a lot of disasters touching on drought, touching on floods that have destroyed property and have led to even the loss of life. Honorable Speaker, if we restore land, through land and through good environment, we are able to get our food. The food we eat comes from our land, comes from a good environment. The clothes we put on comes from a good environment. The food, as I've said, that we eat, even the medicine that we take come from our environment. The shelter that we have, including even this, the house that we are in today, if you look around, all the components that have been used to build this house come from a good environment. And Honorable Speaker, that is why I passionately support this bill. This bill talks about the promotion of afforestation and afforestation, Honorable Speaker. It talks about the promotion of planting of trees in all public land. But Honorable Speaker, I want to state that it should go ahead and not only limit planting of trees on public land, but on private land as well, Honorable Speaker. We have public land all over, but most of these lands are just bare. So I support that if we are able to plant trees in most of this public land, and especially in the county public lands, we'll have a good environment that will determine the future of mankind. Honorable Speaker, when we talk about public land and private land, this brings me to the idea that we should even have a relook at amend the Physical Planning Act. That as even houses are built, as planning is happening, there is need to be an enforcement of planting of trees on those spelled out in the Physical Planning Act. Honorable Speaker, even in the urban centers, we must encourage that the estates, the houses that are built, a lot of greening needs to be done as houses or as estates are brought forward. Honorable Speaker, the amendment talks about replacement of trees if trees are felled. Honorable Speaker, we have our people down in our communities felling trees, sometimes even for charcoal, but that may not be the bad part of it. The bad part of it, Honorable Speaker, is that once these trees are felled, then you find that the ground is left open. I encourage that this must be addressed, that once somebody falls a tree, whether it is for harvesting, normal harvesting, or the dead trees, then a number of trees must be planted to replace this. Honorable Speaker, in my county, we had the Ruma National Park and Kodera Forest that had lots of trees some years back. But if you go there today, Honorable Speaker, the ground is open. And that is why I want to support the afforestation and reforestation programs. Honorable Speaker, in this country, we have national tree planting days. I would pray that we go ahead and even establish family tree planting days. That as we plant trees as a nation, why can't our families also adopt the national tree planting notion so that families are able to plant trees when the rainy season begins? And Honorable Speaker, this requires public education. Honorable Speaker, I also want to enhance this by saying we must also increase the planting of indigenous trees, that as we plant these trees, we must also encourage. And this can take effect by the county departments of forestries. I want to support this bill, Honorable Speaker, because on Article 4, it spells out offenses that there would be, if an offense is committed, you can see the bill spells out even fines that are meted out on people who break some of those rules. Honorable Speaker, it would also be important that we make it mandatory that young people, an example, the young people that we have on the gallery today, why don't we make it mandatory that any young person in school or out of school must also be able to plant trees? And Honorable Speaker, this can be enforced. So Honorable Speaker, sometimes people complain that they have no access to the tree seedlings. This amendment should also take care of the fact that we must also establish a public tree seedling areas where members of the public can be able to go and pick tree seedlings to plant at the beginning of the rainy season, so that people do not have the excuse that they are not able to plant trees. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this bill, and I want to emphasize that a good environment is the source of our food, is the source of our clothes, is the source of the shelter, is the source of the medicine that we take, and so we must take care of our environment. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. Before I give the last, I believe, we still have got 2 more senators to contribute. I have communication from the chair to make. This is with regards to visiting teachers and students from Birithia Girls High School in the county of Nyeri. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon visiting teachers and students from Birithia Girls High School, Othaya constituency in Nyeri County. The delegation comprises 4 teachers and 98 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. In the absence of the Honorable Senator from the county of Nyeri, I will allow Senator Sifuna in under 1 minute to welcome them.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to take this opportunity not only as a Senator for Nairobi, but as one of the leaders in this House to welcome our students to the Senate this afternoon. I hope that you get to learn a few things about how we do our business here. And I'm hoping that there's future senators in the group that has visited us today, Honorable Speaker. And because, Honorable Speaker, their home senator is not here, I undertake that between myself and the chairman, newly minted chair of the Public Accounts Committee, we shall ensure that these kids have a good time when they're here in Nairobi. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Sifuna, for holding brief for Honorable Senator Wamatinga from the county of Nyeri in welcoming the visitor to the Senate. Senator Omar Sheikh Mariam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill, which is the author of the bill is Senator Abdul Haj. Mr. Speaker, this bill, it is our responsibility to ensure sustainable environments for our generations, Mr. Speaker. It is also we to protect our natural resources and safeguard and mitigate the efforts of the climate change. Mr. Speaker, the bill is promoting the afforestation and reforestation in arid and semi-arid land county. Mr. Speaker, on this scenario, Mandera County, we have engaged on these planting trees. We have employed almost 1,500 women. That is creating jobs for planting trees to sustain them until it will be sustained. Mr. Speaker, also, we do that tree planting to safeguard encroachments of people to the road, that is road serving, and also let people know also the importance of the tree planting, that is it creates also the income, that is through carbon credits. Mr. Speaker, in section 2, which is B, it formulates and implements a plan for sourcing the 3 seeds and seedlings that are suitable for the environment and the climate condition in various parts of the country. Mr. Speaker, on this scenario, we need a specialist to do that because some trees which grow in other counties cannot do well in another counties. So it needs also, in this scenario, we need a specialist to do that. Mr. Speaker, it also establish at least 1 tree nursery in every county, in every 47 county. Mr. Speaker, so that at least our people can get seedlings so that they can plant everywhere and everywhere. Mr. Speaker, in also planting trees in schools, public schools. The bill is specific for public schools, but we need also public private land. We have to encourage also the private sector also to do tree planting. Mr. Speaker, I like this section 4A, which means the person who harvested the tree shall replace a tree under the direction and the area designated by the service. Mr. Speaker, in this scenario, we need this, there is a law that if you cut a tree, you plant 3. So we have to enforce that so that we have to replace our environment. Mr. Speaker, when the counties took over this position of tree plantings, we need also as physical responsibilities for those counties who do well in tree plantings to get at least parameters to get their revenue sharing. The share revenue authorities must also take initiatives to check on the feasibility responsibilities for the counties do well in tree planting like Mandera County. Mr. Speaker, Mandera County, they got award from international because of tree planting, and that is a very important important award we got because of tree planting. Mr. Speaker, in these tree planting trees, this is impact on our planet, and we have to take care of the responsibilities to ensure that the sustainable environment for generation of a new generation. Mr. Speaker, in this, the bill also incorporated tax and fiscal incentives to boost investment in the forest land use utilization as suggested by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury. Mr. Speaker, the bill also further mandates the county government to promote the tree plantings in all public land. Mr. Speaker, maybe with amendment, Abdul Haj can incorporate the private land also, so that at least it will be not discriminative to only the public sector, but private sector also can take initiatives and take a responsibility that it is important to take care of our natural resources. Mr. Speaker, maybe we also incorporate the council, that is societies, to take care of our trees. If we portion our counties in societies, the way we did in Mandera counties, so that a society can be taking care of tree planting, so that in our area, everywhere will be greener. Mr. Speaker, with that a few remarks, I support the bill. Thank you.
Senator Edwin Sifuna.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me opportunity to also contribute to this bill. I want to make it clear that I support the bill. Honorable Speaker, we are famously known as the children who grew up under Nyayo. And I remember he used to tell us that when you cut one tree, you plant 2. That was one of his rallying calls. I don't know why Senator Haji has proposed in this particular amendment under Section 4 that instead of what Nyayo used to tell us, that you cut 1, plant 2, he's saying when you cut 1, you plant 1. Honorable Haji, as a person who I know you also grew up during that era, we should at least encourage that there has to be growth from that position of Moi, and even adopt the position that has been given by Senator Mariam, where if you cut 1, you plant 3. Honorable Speaker, as the Senator for Nairobi, many Nairobians believe that in 2004 we had one of the best town clerks by the name John Gakuo, and he's credited for providing a clean environment for the people of Nairobi. He sorted out the garbage menace at that particular point in time. He is famously known for dreaming of a city in a forest. And in an interview just a few months before he passed away, he said that his one biggest regret was that he was not able to achieve that dream. I remember, Honorable Speaker, many people can still remember how Mombasa Road all the way through to Uhuru highway used to look. It was a boulevard with very nice mature trees in the median and also on the side of the road. But Honorable Speaker, subsequent developments have come, including the construction of the expressway, that have ensured that all those trees that used to be in those places were cut down. And we, as a leadership of Nairobi, of course, are extremely concerned with the state of the environment in the city, some of the issues that have been brought up by Senator Mungatana, including the continued closure or barring of residents from accessing Uhuru Gardens and Central Park, which is part of Uhuru Park. Honorable Speaker, in April of 2024, the Cabinet Secretary for Defense, the Honorable Aden Duale, appeared before plenary of this House, and something I can attest to. If you go to Langata Road on a Saturday, when ordinarily many people do their laundry or household chores, you will find many of those women who do those chores have nowhere to sit. They sit along the road, and it is quite an unsightly thing to see, not to mention the lack of facilities for the people of Nairobi to relax. Honorable Speaker, therefore, we must continue to call on the Ministry of Defense, because these two parks were taken over by the Ministry of Defense in February of 2022, and they were being renovated by the military. And the CS himself committed here, and you heard him say that, in fact, he was going to do it the next day, which was the 18th of April in 2024. We are almost coming to a year since that pronouncement by the CS, and that situation is unacceptable. Honorable Speaker, there was another baffling piece of news that I saw this week. The President telling us that they had planted 750 million trees over a period of 12 months in 2024. For many of us, the math was not mathing, as they say in the streets, because that would translate to 2 million trees per day. Honorable Speaker, 2 million trees per day being planted is not something you can hide. And we are hoping that these figures can be backed up. I hope that those who are participating in that tree planting, I can hear Senator Cherargei confirming that he planted 2 million trees a day, at least in Nandi. Let him show us where those trees have been planted. Honorable Speaker, we even went ahead and created a holiday for tree planting in this country, but the incentives are not there. And there's a very serious lack of transparency, Honorable Speaker, even surrounding the question of where these seedlings are being procured. Some of us might not look like we know much about tree planting, but Honorable Speaker, if I share with you my life history, in 2010, I was working for a billboard company here in Nairobi. And part of my duty was, in fact, because as Gakuo had said, the biggest enemy of trees in Nairobi were the people who are running the billboard business. And the company that I used to work for decided that they were going to take initiative in making sure that if there is any tree that is affected because of a billboard going up, we would plant at least 100 seedlings to replace that one tree. And Honorable Speaker, because I was the head of administration then, it fell to me to be the one in charge of that program. Believe it or not, in my suit as a lawyer, as an advocate, I used to know all the suppliers of tree seedlings in Nairobi from the Kenya Forest Service there. They had a nursery on Kiambu Road, all the way to the people who sell trees on Ngong Road. All those people were my friends. I used to have suppliers of manure and red soil in Wangige, who I knew by name. And we used to do tree planting sponsored by that company, Honorable Speaker. But you can see that because we have let go of the rules of the city, there is a serious proliferation of even the billboards in Nairobi, and nobody does that tree planting anymore. Honorable Speaker, we want that this particular amendment to the law, we hope will bring about some sanity and make sure that we return the city to the dream that Honorable John Gakuo had, even if in the end he met with a very ignominious end. Honorable Speaker, therefore, I want to be on record supporting this amendment. And Honorable Speaker, we want to urge again on behalf of the people of Nairobi that we must return this city to the people. And those facilities that were taken over by the military, it is now long overdue. We don't have to summon the CS for Defense to this house again for him to again make promises. We just want that the people of Nairobi have access to Central Park, Uhuru Park, and Uhuru Gardens. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, I have made it clear that I have a problem with the way this government communicates. We were all shocked a few months ago when we started seeing videos on social media of tree cutting that was allegedly going on in, what is it called, Karura Forest. Honorable Speaker, we were all alarmed, only for the Kenya Forest Service to follow out after the outrage. They follow up with a communication claiming that they were harvesting mature trees. Really, if the government or the Kenya Forest Service intends to harvest trees in any of our forested areas in Nairobi, they need to be able to communicate to us that this is what is going to happen. Not to wait for social media outrage, then they follow up with a communication that it is harvesting of mature trees that is going on. And they have not told us about any of the plans to replace that deforestation that happened. We were also very alarmed. One day we just wake up, Honorable Speaker, and when you're driving on the Southern Bypass, you find a whole section of the forest there cleared, and nobody gives any explanation. Then you hear, oh, there is somebody who's building a golf resort. Why are these things done in the manner in which they are done? If the government intends to run such a program, Honorable Speaker, I want them to change the way they communicate with the public. Make it clear that in the next 6 months, we want to undertake such and such a program, and that this is going to be the environmental effect for the people of Nairobi to know that this is a project that is being undertaken by government and not by people who are unscrupulous business people. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna. And if there is anybody who probably would be doubting that you were spearheading tree planting in the course of one of your assignments in the year 2010, yours truly can confirm that indeed you managed that sector very well when you were dealing with the billboard sector. And so you did a good job. I do also expect that in the course of your duties as a senator, please ensure you plant trees wherever you are, in and outside the city of Nairobi. Senator Moses Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the Environmental Laws Amendment Bill 2024, and I also want to congratulate Senator Abdul Mohamed Haji, who is the sponsor of this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is an important bill. It's surprising that existing legislation has not provided for what Senator Abdul Haji is calling for in this amendment, because this bill seeks to amend the existing act to make further provisions for afforestation and reforestation of forests in counties in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this was a pet subject in the administration of President Daniel Arap Moi. Out of the many things he did, I think those of us who were in the 844 system of education, afforestation and reforestation was afforestation, reforestation, and deforestation were concepts that always came up in our GHC, Geography, History, and Civics syllabus and examination. I'm not very sure how the CBC has taken care of this, but I hope that the education curriculum has picked these concepts to encourage our children that a tree planted today is not a tree planted for today's child, it is a tree planted for our children and our grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. It is noble, Mr. Speaker, for Senate to call upon county governments to ensure that they promote tree planting and also become actively involved in the National Tree Planting Week. Mr. Speaker, I think it was in the last year that we were given a holiday out of the blues. And in the Kenyan Yuma, particularly Kenyans who have lived for a long time in Nairobi, they decided to plant trees in all kinds of holes. And we are waiting to see, perhaps after 9 months, whether those trees have germinated and whether they have grown. And so, Mr. Speaker, if you give Kenyans a public holiday without clearly telling them what they're supposed to do and without a clear build-up on the activities of that day, Kenyans will misuse it. They will take advantage of the day for sherehe and take advantage of the day to do other things that do not promote that objective. That particular event, that National Tree Planting Day, Mr. Speaker, we saw the national government, particularly the members of the National Executive, were the ones flying in choppers going around the country, releasing carbon into the atmosphere, further causing serious damage to our climate, going to hills and forests, and it was a one-day affair. Mr. Speaker, we are not very sure whether those trees were taken care of. I wish that Senator Ledamo Lekina was in this house, because I do recall when there was a fight for the Mau forest, he had a very innovative approach, where he went and approached friends from South Africa who gave him a small aircraft and gave him seed balls. And I do recall him flying all over the Mau and dropping seed balls. Mr. Speaker, this issue of reforestation, we should not think about it through the prism of the traditional digging a hole and planting a tree. Even seed balls have been found to be quite effective. And I want to encourage county governments to adopt that approach. And it is very easy to use youth groups, to use women groups, to use organized groups, to give them those seed balls, let them scatter them, let them spread them, so that when the rains start falling, like it did today in Nairobi, then those seed balls can germinate. But beyond the seed balls, I think it's also a bright idea, as Senator Abdul has proposed, that we need to establish tree nurseries in each county. These tree nurseries, I hope that we are not going to have this situation that we have started seeing in a few counties. I've seen a program called Climate Works Mtaani. And Mr. Speaker, this is a program with good intentions, but if it's not scrutinized, if it's not oversighted, then governors are just going to be organizing militias with the next election in mind. If you're going to do legitimate climate works in our county governments, let's ensure that they go out of the clutches and out of the control of governors, because they're going to just get their goons and their usual cheering squad into those programs. And those people will be there not for the love of the environment, but just to get a small income. I do recall in one of the other counties that we looked at in the Public Accounts Committee, I think it was Tharaka Nithi County. Mr. Speaker, in that county, the governor had set up small units of youth in every ward, and the number was quite high. Even though they were not involved in climate or tree planting, they were involved in maintenance of roads, and that triggered some concern that some of these things we establish purportedly to benefit the youth can be easily abused. The tree nurseries in counties, I hope that we can come up with a model where we can empower self-help groups, community-based organizations. These people who are currently parading plants and seedlings along the roadside, let the county governments not throw them out of business. For the county government to do a giga nursery, the way they're doing giga kitchens for school feeding. I hope this is not going to lead to giga tree nurseries controlled by county governments, consuming public resources, and that is overpriced and overvalued. Let's hope that this is going to spread out. I already can see how this will work in my county of Homa Bay. Senator Beatrice Ogola knows that along the lake, on the shores of Lake Victoria, it's a very fertile zone because, there's a silt that comes upstream and goes into the lake. So it's extremely fertile. A lot of young people, for lack of employment, have now resorted to go to the shores of the lake, those silted areas. Some areas are fairly swampy, and they're growing vegetables, they're doing tomatoes, they're doing sukuma wiki and cabbages. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you they're doing extremely well. In my village, the boys and girls who are doing farming next to the lake are doing better than those who are operating bodabodas on the tarmac. And these are already existing groups, which, if we can give them an incentive, that if they can set up tree nurseries, there'll be an off-take program by the county government. I believe this can broaden their revenue sources and put more money in the pockets of our youth in the counties. Mr. Speaker, I further support the proposal that there would be tax and fiscal incentives to boost investments in forest land use and utilization. If someone does good for the environment, let them get some benefit. Let them get something in return for doing good. I think this would be the best justification for fiscal incentives, because we are making investments that are going to last beyond generations. And you see, Mr. Speaker, many a times when we are talking about our finance bills and our fiscal policies, it is always about the increase in tax. The conversation on reliefs is not usually amplified. And I do hope that C.S. Mbadi, if he was listening, this would be a very genius insertion into his fiscal plan and finance bill that he would be bringing to Parliament, that instead of starting his speech by saying that we are increasing VAT or we're increasing housing levy, or we're increasing this social health, that you'd start his conversation by saying that we are giving an incentive to people who plant trees. We are giving incentives to corporates who, as part of their corporate social responsibility, they have decided that they're going to reforest and ensure that our country's tree cover and forest cover is maintained and is optimized. Because, Mr. Speaker, corporates sometimes engage in CSR that might not have very consequential long-term effects. I know a number of corporates have gone into the sports arena because it's in sports that there is visibility. In fact, I would have gone ahead and proposed that out of the resources we get from betting and gambling companies, a certain percentage should be ring-fenced and directed towards climate adaptation and climate mitigation activities. Because, Mr. Speaker, that industry is extremely liquid, not because it is exploitative, but because I think this country, our young people have a gambling culture as a result of lack of opportunities. And I believe that we could put a sin tax. We could put a sin tax on gambling. We could put a sin tax, as we have done, on tobacco. We could put a sin tax on alcohol, but direct it not just to the overall budget support that we have done, but put a percentage to go to climate change activities. Mr. Speaker, the National Tree Planting Week, if it is well coordinated and organized, I believe that all the primary schools and secondary schools and universities in this country, if they knew 3 months in advance, or if they knew if it was put in the annual calendar of the nation, that on a certain day we are going to plant trees, it would be much more effective than a date being gazetted in an ambush fashion as it was done in the last year. Mr. Speaker, when the Leader of Majority was making comments on this bill yesterday, he challenged the Climate Change Caucus, which I have the privilege to lead, to do much more in terms of climate action. Mr. Speaker, I do agree with the Leader of Majority that a lot of conversations around climate have existed in boardrooms, have existed in conferences. We have had conferences of parties. Right now, we are, I think, at COP28 going to COP29. And yet, whenever we go there, it turns out to be a talking shop. We come back without making substantive progress. Last year, when we went to Baku in Azerbaijan, the African countries and the least developed countries wanted a new collective quantifiable goal on climate finance that would mobilize $1.3 trillion for climate change adaptation and mitigation. Mr. Speaker, it was quite a disappointment that out of that conference of parties, the developed countries were not able to achieve much. I believe that the commitments that were made did not exceed 300 billion out of more than 1 trillion that was required. It is further troubling that the United States of America has given notice of withdrawal from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, under which parties organize themselves under the Conference of Parties. Mr. Speaker, the rest of the world cannot afford to go to sleep simply because the United States of America has decided to be irresponsible. You do not stop taking care of your garden. You do not stop fumigating your house simply because your neighbor is not fumigating theirs. And that seems to be the very irrational decision that the United States has made, because they argue that they should not be penalized for success. But that success has been at great expense to the rest of the countries. So, Speaker, I do believe that if democracy was to hold sway, that in the next 3-4 years, the residents of the U.S. will see the folly of the decisions that they're making today, and that they will come back to the UNFCCC, and they'll come back to be parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I want also to put it on record that within the Climate Change Caucus, we have appreciated that we must go beyond the talk and do some action. In this session, Mr. Speaker, we will be initiating a program known as Parliamentarians for Climate Change. This is a program that has been financed by the Green Climate Fund through UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and it is being implemented by Climate Parliament, which is a global organization that brings together parliamentarians who are passionate about climate change. The theme of this engagement is to encourage establishment of green investment zones in each country. A green investment zone, think about it as the way we look at the EPZs, the way we look at industrial zones, the way we look at county aggregation parks. A green investment zone would be an area that is custom-made with proper laws, proper regulations, proper infrastructure for people to come and put in investments in renewable energy. Now, you can imagine that today, if you wanted to put up a solar farm, and I have this experience, Mr. Speaker, we had a US investor who wanted to put up a 40-megawatt solar farm on the hills of Nyakwere. I think Senator Beatrice Ogola was a CEC member in Homa Bay at that time, and I believe she was involved in ensuring that the land was acquired and in bringing in the investor. And the investors were quite ready to put in millions of US dollars into this project, to put in 40 megawatts. But then the problem came up in offtake, because EPRA, the regulatory authority, and the rest of the entities, statutory bodies involved in uptake and transmission of electricity had a dim view of solar. They said solar is intermittent power and that it is not stable, and therefore they were not prioritizing it into the national grid. Mr. Speaker, advances in solar energy and technology have outstripped advances in any other sector. We see, courtesy of electric vehicles, the advances in storage of power, the advances in batteries, the advances in inverters, advances in solar panels, Mr. Speaker. This country needs to have a clear and robust renewable energy strategy that puts solar at the center. One country that has just recently suffered the vagaries of climate change, I think that must be Zambia. Their energy mix is heavily reliant on hydro. And then there was the El Nino and La Nina that hit Southern Africa recently. There was a devastating drought in Southern Africa. The rivers dried, and so the hydropower stations could not generate electricity. That country was engulfed in darkness. In Kenya today, we are generating our electricity from renewable sources like the geothermal towards Naivasha. We also have wind in Turkana, but we still have about 20 to 30% reliance on hydro. And if indeed the forecast that we are being given are true, that we are going into a season of drought, then you can clearly tell if we switch off 20% of our power sources, there would be a huge impact on the economy. So this Parliamentarians for Climate Change initiative on green investment zones aims at encouraging government to establish dedicated zones for investors to put up serious investments in renewable energy. It could be green hydrogen, it could be solar, it could be wind, it could be any other form of renewable energy. Where parliamentarians come in is in ensuring that there's proper legislation, proper regulation, proper fiscal incentives, because this is the province of parliament. A study that was conducted in India on the factors that affected implementation and adoption of renewable energy put regulation and legislation among the top 3 factors. The other one was offtake, because once you have invested, you find regulatory bodies that are not willing to take it up. Mr. Speaker, all these initiatives around green investment, we are doing them because we have cut down our forests, we have cut down our trees, and we have gotten to a point where we are not able to absorb the carbon that comes out of industrial activity. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the issue of carbon credits has always come up. When we plant a lot of trees, it is possible for us to go to the market and claim carbon credits and get an additional source of income. However, Mr. Speaker, under the Paris Agreement, there is an Article 6 that talks about internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. There are countries that are taking advantage of that article to come to Africa, to buy forests, to take up parks, and we have seen it, Mr. Speaker. There's a company from the United Arab Emirates that so far has signed up deals in Africa to take up African forests, and they say the size equivalent to the entire United Kingdom, so that they can continue mining fossil fuels, drilling oil in the Arabian Peninsula, and then they net off with the oxygen that is emitted from African forests. Mr. Speaker, it's a matter that those of us who go for the Conference of Parties need to talk about robustly, because you cannot continue polluting and then you come to Africa and purport that you have bought or you own a forest and say that the carbon capture by that forest is equivalent to the emissions you're making. It is conmanship at international level. And this country must be wary. And I do hope that if we are going to hold the second Africa Climate Summit, which I'm being told might be held in Africa, that these are some of the conversations that will be there, and that this parliament will be robustly involved in the conversations at the Africa Climate Summit. And Mr. Speaker, it has been good when the chair of that committee at the Africa Union is the President of the Republic of Kenya. We hope that the numbers and figures we'll be taking to the AU, to the Africa Climate Summit, will be numbers that will be verifiable. Because if you say we have planted 1 billion trees, it would be a great folly if Kenyans on social media then unpack it and realize that it was all a pack of lies. Mr. Speaker, I'll finalize by taking on the call that many senators have given, that all of us must walk the talk. We are in talks with the Kenya National Highways Authority for the next rainy season in April to go to Gembe Hills. Gembe Hills is a gazetted forest next to my home village. And in the last National Tree Planting Day, C.S. Murkomen was there. He led a tree planting exercise, and he challenged Kenya to donate hundreds of thousands of seedlings. And in this rainy season in April, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure you and assure the House that I will join Kenya and other players, and I will also mobilize resources through the Kajwang Foundation, so that the rainy season we go out to the forest, we go and do what Senator Abdul is calling on the government to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Now, honorable senators, that brings us to the end of debate on this particular bill. And I now call upon the mover of the motion, Senator Haji, to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me take this opportunity first to thank all the senators that have contributed and to appreciate them for the many ideas and suggestions that they have given to the bill. Mr. Speaker, when I came up with this bill, it was an attempt to correct something that was already missing in the environment law by introducing vegetation of arid and semi-arid areas. But in no way did this bill intend to alienate any of the other regions. The other regions had already been covered in the existing bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, as senators, we went to Mandera, and I think I was privileged to have attended Senator Sifuna, Senator Onyonka, Senator Eddy, and the other senators to Mandera County. And we actually saw it for ourselves, that vegetating an arid or semi-arid area is something that is very much doable. Mandera has been able to do it. You can imagine, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Mandera, temperatures usually soar up to the heights of 40 degrees centigrade. And when the wind blows, it feels like you're in a microwave. Mr. Speaker, Senator Roba, who was governor at that time, initiated a program to vegetate Mandera. And the trees have now, 10 years later, grown, and they act as a buffer to the hot winds, ensuring that the people of Mandera do not suffer from heat wave. Mr. Speaker, sir, the senators that have contributed have enriched this bill, and I would like to appreciate each and every one of them, from Senator Cherargei, Olekina, Cheriot, Wambua, Esi, Senator Manzo, Senator Mundigi, Dulo, Miraj, Veronica, Wamatinga, Kisang, Senator Abbas, Senator Sigei, yourself, Mr. Speaker, Senator Kamar, Senator Mogeni, Senator Onyonka, Senator Joyce Korir, Senator Kajwang, Senator Sifuna, Senator Mungatana, Senator Beatrice, and Senator Mariam. And I look forward, Mr. Speaker, sir, to work with every one of the senators to ensure that we introduce the clauses that they have proposed. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I move to reply, I would just like to highlight some of the contributions that have been made by my colleague senators. Senator Cherargei Senator Cherargei intends to introduce a clause to expand the vegetation cover of the Kenyan marshland to 30%. He also mentioned that under the KFS, that he proposes that instead of just planting 2 trees for every 1 cut down, adapt the trees to ensure they reach maturity. And most of the senators, Mr. Speaker, have, and I think that was a typo in the bill or an oversight. If you cut 1 tree, you plant 1 tree. I don't think that is the way we should go, Mr. Speaker. It's actually, if you cut 1 tree, you should plant more than 3 trees, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, such as Senator Cheriot also requested that logging regulations should require that only mature trees are harvested, which I thought was a very good idea. Senator Cherargei also suggested that you utilize the pre-zone land for agroforestry, allowing inmates to plant and adapt and maintain the trees. Senator Cherargei also suggested that we introduce community service orders where offenders are assigned to tree planting and maintaining as a project, which I also thought was a good idea. Mr. Speaker, Senator Olekina proposed that whenever a tree is felled, it must be replaced in a location. He actually opposed the idea that it should be replaced in a location designated by Kenya Forest Services. The senator objects to this requirement, arguing that it introduces unnecessary bureaucracy. And I think yourself, Mr. Speaker, had also mentioned that. He proposes an alternative approach where an individual who cuts down a tree should immediately plant 2 to 3 trees in the same location rather than having to wait for KFS to designate an area. Senator Olekina also proposed that we actually introduce a clause to take care of the madenge plant, which is a very destructive plant in most of the arid and semi-arid areas. There was also several propositions to the week for planting trees. I think Senator Professor Kamar, Senator Olekina, and several other senators suggested that 1 week is not even enough. We should have a tree planting and tree growing week month. So I think that is something we'll have to discuss and see if we should include in this bill. There was also the popular suggestion that every school, that we should actually introduce a curriculum in our schools where we teach our children so that we can inculcate in their culture the culture of growing and planting and growing trees. And I think that was also a good idea. Senator Cheriot proposed that we consider integrating tree planting practices in special occasions, such as when heads of state and dignitaries visit Kenya. Senator Wambua wanted us to find out a way to put in the bill that it should include provisions, either expressly or implicitly, that ensures leaders take a leading role in environmental conservation efforts. Senator Essie wanted to be a bit, she was requesting that we have a way to track trees, whether if they're still standing or they've been cut down. So I think that is also something we'll have. Senator Essie is a youth, so she's probably thinking in more in the future, how we should be more futuristic in this bill. So that is something also we will consider. Senator Mundigi was interested in medicinal value of trees and how we can commercialize that in our counties. Senator Fatuma Dulo, on the same matter of medicinal trees, she wanted to consider how we can have licensing for trees for medicinal purposes, so that there is a need to increase investment in research. And she also suggested that there is a need to increase investment and research and issuance of licenses to qualified individuals and institutions. Senator Miraj was interested on how this initiative or how this bill how we can introduce a clause where the youth can benefit from any initiative of planting and growing trees. Senator Veronica took the opportunity to challenge KRA to come up with initiatives to reward companies and private sector when they take up initiatives of planting trees. The comments are many. Mr. Speaker, sir, your proposal was actually one of the most interesting, where we should include the word grow in the bill instead of just having planting trees. And I think that is important because in most of the areas that we were targeting with this bill, you cannot just grow trees, you cannot just plant trees, you have to grow and nurture them. So that is something we should actually include in the bill. Mr. Speaker said there was also the issue of nurseries. The bill had proposed a nursery in every county. There was a proposal that it should actually be in every sub-county, as Joyce Korir had suggested. Senator Professor Kamar also had a similar. She wanted a nursery in every school in every sub-county, which is the same thing. I think that's something we can consider and agree as part of the amendment. Senator Mogeni wanted us to strengthen the required meaningful public participation before any tree or trees are cut down, which I think is very important. We should actually include that in the bill. Senator Mungatana actually raised a very important matter about the Uhuru Gardens. And I think that is also something we should actually take it up as senators. Uhuru Gardens was intended for the public, and by only going by the name of Uhuru Garden, it should actually be converted into a garden or a botanical garden in Nairobi, so that people can actually visit and be able to understand and be educated on the different species of trees, flowers, and other vegetations. Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill, as I had mentioned earlier, was intended to bring the arid and semi-arid areas into the fold of planting trees. Mr. Speaker, sir, our areas, the arid and semi-arid areas, it is very difficult to plant trees. And that is why this bill was introducing indigenous trees that can actually withstand the harsh climate in our areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we introduce bills in this Senate or in Parliament, it is intended to make sure that it covers all the regions and all the and benefits all the people of the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, laws are supposed to govern each one of us equally. And I was a bit disheartened, Mr. Speaker, sir, and actually heartbroken by comments by certain leaders in our country who decided to criticize the initiative by the president to remove the extra vetting of IDs for the people of northern Kenya and border counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, it was very reckless for individual like Governor Natembeya of Trans Nzoia to prejudice and criticize a whole community in the region and labeling them as terrorists. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a leader and as an elected leader, he should know that any injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Mr. Speaker, when a law is introduced to discriminate any Kenyan, it is a law that should not be in place, Mr. Speaker, sir. And that is one thing you should understand. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to take this opportunity now. I beg to reply to the bill, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I request that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Haji. And as requested, putting of the question in this particular bill is deferred to the next session of this House. Now we will call the next order.
Order number 12, the County Civic Education Bill, Senate Bills number 4 of 2024, second reading, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, this is a resumption of the debate that was interrupted yesterday, the 12th February 2025, in the afternoon sitting. And by the time the House rose, the Honorable Senator Julius Mulgor had a balance of 19 minutes, and he's not in the House. That particular 19-minute, therefore, is definitely going to be forfeited in his absence, and I will proceed to call upon the senators who are present to continue contributing. Senator Samson Cherargei, you go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, from the onset, I want to congratulate Senator Esther Okenyuri in a now formative and in the beginning of this leadership role and legislative agenda. Senator Esther Okenyuri continues to distinguish herself as one of the youngest brilliant senators of our generation, which I'm proud to strongly associate with her. And I'm happy that since she joined Senate, and coincidentally, the God of Senator Esther Okenyuri must be very near where she comes from, because initially it was the Senator Soipan Tuya, who is now the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Defense. She joined us midway, but I'm impressed she has learned the ropes very quickly. And her commitment and zeal and passion in how she does her legislative agenda is quite impressive. And I'm happy, you know, when you are nominated, you don't have an obligation. Her and Senator Ogola, as one of the committed nominated members, that every time we are in the House, they are always there from the beginning to the last. What I'm impressed about Senator Okenyuri is I normally see her in the village interacting. And I want to appeal to the people of Kisii. I've never done this before. That if God favors Senator Esther Okenyuri, please, in the next 14th Parliament, she should join us as an elected member of Parliament to be part of the transformation of this country. I have seen her wearing even school uniform to appeal, even wearing church clothes, the ones and interacting. So, and I want to assure the people of Kisii that Senator Okenyuri, she's up to the task. We are proud as our generation that we want to have one of the finest. Mr. Speaker, just in closing, because I have two comments and then I have four for the bill, is, you know, Senator Esther Okenyuri continues to be an inspiration to the girl child. You know, women sometimes feel inadequate, they feel they cannot compete. But since this platform has come, Senator Okenyuri has distinguished herself. And I'm happy she has not seen herself through the lenses of gender. But I want to borrow the words of Senator Ogola when a matter came before the House at some times back, which was a motive, that I'm happy she's not seeing herself through the gender lenses. She's seeing herself as an equal member of this House, and we are proud of what you are doing. My sister, we are proud of you, and I wish you well. I hope one day and one time you'll remember on 13, just before Valentine's of 2025, Mr. Speaker, I did make this prophecy. And Mr. Speaker, on a lighter note, some of us men tomorrow, we are told not to get close to the other agenda. So, because there is a flu that is affecting men, so we will not be available tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, but we'll available maybe in children's home to show love to the less fortunate and others, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, secondly and finally is on the bill. I am impressed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the reason Gen Z, and what happened is sad, where this parliament was attacked, is because I was surprised in the last session, the third session, Mr. Speaker. There was a lot of misinformation on Finance Bill 2023. You know, because of lack of civic education and public participation. When you used to go to functions in Bomet, I go in Nandi, Senator Ogola goes to Homa Bay, Senator Okenyuri goes to Kisii. You sit in a public baraza and you hear what people are saying is not even in the finance bill. It is because of lack of civic education, Mr. Speaker. Public participation is a key component. I am happy, Mr. Speaker, that it is mandatory now to do civic education, Mr. Speaker. And I want to challenge you. I was talking about tolling of our roads, where the government want to toll major highways to raise 230 billion. The public participation is being done now. Many people will not attend, but when it is passed, they will start running around the country saying they were not being involved during public participation of tolling of our roads, Mr. Speaker. Even the finance bill of 2025, I want to encourage Kenyans to participate. I'm happy. And I rarely give accolades, Mr. Speaker, as you know me. But I was impressed by Senator CPA, Cabinet Secretary John Badi Ngongo, who went to Jivanji Gardens and tried to demystify what finance bill is, what is in there, so that we go ahead with the facts before the fake news, which Donald Trump calls fake news, continue to reign among, Mr. Speaker. You know, this country will thrive in fake news. And I'm happy the CS in charge of Treasury is taking the lead. I want to challenge members, as we do budget policy statements, I want to challenge members of public and members of National Assembly Finance and Budget, as they go around the country, they should at least ensure they go through 100, 290 constituencies for this public participation. Even other bills, Mr. Speaker. So the reason even Finance Bill 2023 led to uproar is because there was a lot of misinformation. People are saying you want to tax the debt, you want to tax land. But when you read our finance bill, Mr. Speaker, you agree with me and what is happening is that you do. And let us use the medium, Mr. Speaker. And I saw today you are in Citizen, the State of the Nation. And you are also doing civic education because you are telling Kenyans the facts so that people do not thrive on misinformation. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that public officials will be taken through mandatory, Mr. Speaker. In clause number 5, it says public officials, including elected who are us and appointed officials at national, shall undergo mandatory civic education. Mr. Speaker, can you believe, for example, in Nandi today, if you go to Nandi County Assembly and ask for the budget, no one will give it to you. Not knowing that under Article 34 and 35, there is right to information and there is right to media freedom. You go to the governor's office, Nandi, we have demanded the budget, we have demanded annual development plans, county integrated development plan, the status of projects. But they will never give you. Yet it is a public document. Yet it is a right of every Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, even I have seen, Mr. Speaker, whenever civic education is done in Homa Bay or Nandi or Bomet, when they are doing public participation and public participation for Finance Act or Finance Bill of County Assembly, they will call a few characters, give them soda and mukate and say they have done public participation. And they say sign your name and ID number and phone number. Then they take it back. Yet civic education has not been done. What is the content that is inside that bill that we are proposing, Mr. Speaker? So I'm happy that all officials, we should know that public participation precedes civic education. Let us as leaders, Mr. Speaker, even I know politics is sweet, you go to a funeral, you go to a public function, let us use even 1 or 2 minutes to engage our people and educate them on the roles that we should give, Mr. Speaker. Even on civic education, I know, Mr. Speaker, most of the NGOs have been funding this issue of civic education across many other areas, but I'm happy there will be a structure that will continue to engage them, Mr. Speaker. I want to challenge that there is a budget. You know, Mr. Speaker, civic education, and you know Senator Ogola has been a CCM in former Rasanka's government, Colonel Rasanka. Cyprian Awiti, former governor, Cyprian Awiti. And she knows very well, she will tell you from my experience, that most of the civic education awareness were being financed by non-governmental organizations. There was no allocation of budget, and if it is there, it is for soda and mkate. But you find, and you know, Mr. Speaker, you know Donald Trump has suspended everything under USAID. Yeah. So, you know, most of the NGOs used to finance civic education awareness. But I'm happy in clause number 9, county government shall ensure that there is allocation of budget for civic education. And we should brace ourselves. The USAID now is gone. Mr. Speaker, but you know, I want to thank Donald Trump. And I want to thank the head of Doge, that is Elon Musk, Mr. Speaker, although he has been fighting reappropriation of land in South Africa. to try and emasculate the South African government, Mr. Speaker. But I want to agree that USAID funds must be audited. Mr. Speaker, can you believe few months before Donald Trump won an election, the USAID in Kenya were purchasing 5 cars for 100 million, the latest brand of Toyota Prado, Mr. Speaker. You go to Wilsonia, these consultants of USAID fly in the morning to Kakuma and come back in the evening. They live in posh estates like Runda, Karen, where you are paying 400, 300,000 per rent. It means out of 184 billion that USAID has sent to Kenya to support Kenyans, only 10% was achieving to intended purposes. Therefore, we want to agree with the US government led by Donald Trump that the USAID must be taken to the intended purpose. And we agree with them that they must be audited, because you find consultants will sit in hotels, will sit in Java and other hotels with a laptop, and they are being paid in terms of dollars, Mr. Speaker. Yet the real intention of money could not get. And therefore, most of this civic education awareness was being financed by non-governmental organization, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that even we should have a structure of engaging. Whenever public participation is done in Longisa, let us list, let us get the name, let us have a structure of engagement. I know County Governments Act, I think Section 81 on public participation as a critical component. And I'm happy Senator Okenyuri is proposing something that has been given, she's giving life to Article 10 on principles of good governance and national values, Mr. Speaker. One of them is public participation, which is anchored in civic education and awareness in our republic, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this bill, I expected all senators to be here. The reason we are fighting on the ground is because the county governments who are corrupt will never like to read the true reflection of what is happening. And that is why, as a senator, whenever you go and tell the people, for example, in Nandi, in the last financial year, I made sure around 10 billion was taken to Nandi County. People will be shocked because what they are seeing on the ground is not reflective on the equitable shareable revenue and conditional grants and own source revenue that was allocated to counties, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I'm happy there is going to be a structure, Mr. Speaker, and it is very important. Even another aspect that is clause number 17 is grounds for registration, Mr. Speaker, which is very critical. And I'm happy, I remember there was a crackdown of NGOs. And at that time, those NGOs were being cracked down, Mr. Speaker, because they were doing something that was not intended. Also, as we allow civic education to be funded by NGOs, we don't want civic education to be done to incite the public against government or incite the public against their own country. We are aware. And you remember in 2017, because some of us were serving in this house, some of the organizations by the NGOs, some of them were being accused, allegedly, of financing terrorism in the country. Some of them are being accused funding destabilization. Mr. Speaker, you remember even in the GNC revolution, there were allegations that George Soros Foundation, Mr. Speaker, was part and parcel that were financing the revolution in the guise of civic education and awareness. I'm happy there is a legal framework to control the type of NGOs that come to the country. We are not objecting, Mr. Speaker, and let me go on record crystal clear. We are not objecting that the NGOs should not be part and parcel of process of civic awareness. But what we are saying, we must know who they are. What is their intention? What is their purpose? What is their objects? We don't want NGOs, Mr. Speaker, that will be used to destabilize governments in Africa. And when you look at across the world, it is only the NGOs that bring civic awareness on political and civil issues that are heavily financed in Africa. And we saw the sad reality of the GNC revolution, that in as much the young people had the right intention to try and fix problems that we are facing, somebody somewhere through the NGOs hijacked the process, Mr. Speaker, until they wanted to destabilize the country. Therefore, the vetting, and I want to challenge the National Intelligence Service, our security apparatus, they must vet the NGOs that do civic awareness, and Mr. Speaker. And the only way we can fix them, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that they are cataloged, they are known what they are doing, Mr. Speaker. The final part is on the issue of false statements. I agree. Mr. Speaker, fake news must be flagged. I remember, Mr. Speaker, social media must also, and I'm happy, that all social media must have physical offices in Nairobi or in Kenya. Because when you open Facebook, Mr. Speaker, it has so misleading information. You open X or Twitter, you open TikTok, you open whichever social media, Instagram and others, you rarely and hardly see, Mr. Speaker. Even, Mr. Speaker, I had the IT minister. I'm lucky I survived. Mr. Speaker, I'm still a member of ICT with my sisters in Ogola. Can you believe it is only in Kenya that when you open your social media, you will get pornography being displayed in our social media, Mr. Speaker. But when you go to countries like Saudi Arabia, countries in Middle East like Emirates, United Arab Emirates, they have proper regulation and discipline in terms of all these social media accounts. It is because we have given too much freedom that does not have discipline, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we challenge in this issue of false statements, and I'm happy, I want to recommend Senator Okenyuri, this offense of false statement and issue of calling people and telling them lies, the way some NGOs are doing in this country. I want to propose that it should be 5 million for anybody who spreads false statement. Because, Mr. Speaker, imagine if an NGO does civic awareness in Kablong and they tell them to overthrow, for example, hypothetically overthrow the government. Is it not expensive, the side effect, than the punishment? So I want to agree that all NGOs and anybody who does civic awareness on false statement, we must ensure that they are punitive of 5 million Kenyan shillings, or alternative, they should be in jail for 10 years. Because the cost of losing a country and a society, ask Somalia. Mr. Speaker, I was with some senior in this region. I was on the sidelines of the issues of DRC, M23 crisis and what have you. And I sat with the people. Some friends from Somalia were telling DRC, don't go to our route, because it is expensive to come back from where Somalia is. And it has destabilized the north of Africa, Mr. Speaker. Even in Rwanda now and DRC, we don't want to go them to that direction. And we hope on Saturday, I don't know, Senator Ogola has not given me the exact date when elections of AU will be done. I think on Saturday? Saturday immediately after Valentine, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I'm trying to get a private jet to that destination, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure, and I want to assure the naysayers, Mr. Speaker, that Raila Amolo Odinga will be elected the chairperson of African Union Community. And I want to ask Baba Raila Odinga, his first assignment must bring stability in DRC crisis we must resolve. We want an Africa that is peaceful, Mr. Speaker. We want, as Raila takes over as AUC chairman, to spearhead the issue of resolving crisis in DRC, Mr. Speaker, so that as a continent, we become more stable. And Mr. Speaker, finally, as I conclude, I don't know what is wrong with some Kenyans. There are many people who are praying for Raila to fail. You know, we are no longer patriotic, Mr. Speaker. Go to Tanzania. You saw even when Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan and my brother, my very close friend, Ambassador Balozi Njimbi, who is the presumptive deputy president of Tanzania, Mr. Speaker, and you should know that he is my close friend, the incoming deputy president of Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. Those people are very patriotic, Mr. Speaker. You remember when they were doing their national delegates of CCM in Dodoma, all musicians from Diamond, Shusho, Sijui Zuju, and the rest showed up to show support because of patriotism of their country. But when you come to Kenya, some people are praying, and I'm told others have gone to the mountains. Others are consulting witch doctors in Indian Ocean for Raila to fail. Tunasema washindwe katika jina la Yesu. Baba must strive, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, I congratulate Senator Okenyuri and wish him well. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherage, as you're closing, you went overboard in the language use, contrary to the standing orders. Place yourself in order next time. And the comments that you made as regards Senator Beatrice Ogola and Senator Esi Okenyuri is basically because of their dedication to work and their responsibility as responsible members of this House. And I commend you for that, because it can only be better when members are committed to their work. And I commend you for commenting the honorable mover of this particular bill. I will allow Senator Ogola, Beatrice Akinyi, to also add her voice. to the bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to start by congratulating Senator Okenyuri, just as my senior brother, Senator Cheregai, has indicated that Senator is a young, enterprising legislator who is committed to her work, not only in the House, but even back in her community. Senator Okenyuri has often invited me to go with her to Kisiland just to support the community. And I want to tell the people of Kisii that with Senator Okenyuri, you'll never get it wrong. However, Honorable Speaker, following from where Senator Cheregai has left, I wanted to assure Senator Cheregai that you don't need to be worried about people who pray negatively. Prayers are for good. So sometimes some wisdom has indicated that, Honorable Speaker, when you point somebody with one finger, little do you know that the rest of the fingers are pointing to yourself. But I would also want to say that there is an Arabian proverb, Honorable Speaker, that it says that unlike the stomach, the brain never alerts you when it is empty. And so, Honorable Speaker, for Kenyans or whoever they are who are negative to what is happening in the whole of Africa, we can only forgive them. But I want to assure you, they will never stop the will of the Lord. Honorable Speaker, on the same note, I want to state that to the heads of state that will be casting their votes on Saturday to elect the Right Honorable Prime Minister Engineer Raila Odinga, be sure and confident that you'll be getting the best of the best, that you'll be electing a patriot, that when you cut Raila's blood, all you find is love for Africa. Look at his manifesto. His passion for security in Africa, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Beatrice.
His passion to see that Africans...
that you confine your contribution to the bill that is before the House. You are actually going outside the relevant...
I'm guided, Honorable Speaker. And as I remain guided and pray that I remain guided, Honorable Speaker, I would like to wish Baba well on Saturday. And on behalf of everybody else in this republic, we are sure His Excellency the President will do his best. Honorable Speaker, now let me come to this outstanding bill on civic education. Honorable Speaker, education is a lifelong activity that we all learn throughout our lives. And I'm happy that Senator Okenyuri has brought this bill, the County Civic Education Bill. And Honorable Speaker, just to reflect on how far you want me to confine, even the last sentences I made about the AU is about civic education. But let me come back to the bill that is before the House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I've said education is an ongoing process. And some of the challenges we have had to deal with the public in the counties about less knowledge and about the limits of public participation, if we had this bill in place, our people would be prepared throughout the year on what public participation is, even before they are called for the public participation activities. Honorable Speaker, one of the reasons why I support this bill is that this bill takes notes of the national values we have in the Constitution. And Honorable Speaker, It refers to the national values, and I would like to remind us ourselves that some of them are honesty, obedience, loyalty, self-discipline, self-reliance, patriotism that we have just been talking about. What better way, Honorable Speaker, would we have that we would have a system where these national values will be imparted into our people throughout, and they'll be enshrined in this bill that has been brought about by Senator Okenyuri. Honorable Speaker, this will be a solution to most of the challenges we have back with our communities. That, Honorable Speaker, sometimes there are topical issues that come up. Some of the topical issues we have that we've had to deal with and are still going on are issues like femicide, issues like abductions or disappearances of people, issues like issues we had previously, even like the NADCO or IBC. Honorable Speaker, why I mentioned some of these topical issues is that when we go back to our communities, we are only left with functions like funerals, or you happen to meet people on ad hoc arrangements. Honorable Speaker, some of us, like me, I'm a nominated senator. We may not have the capacity to run full-time physical offices where you'd meet your people if you go to the ground. So it follows that wherever we meet them, whether it is in your home or whether it is in a funeral, that is when, as a leader, you have an opportunity to address your people and talk to them about these pertinent issues like femicide. Honorable Speaker, if we had this bill, the county governments would have an opportunity, as enshrined in the structures that are here, in giving our people, in educating our people, and particularly young girls and young women that continue to lose their life in what we call as femicide. Honorable Speaker, I'm left wondering why in this community every day when we wake up, either a 3-year-old girl has been abused and killed. We have a 12-year-old girl has been killed. Just the other day, Honorable Speaker, I mentioned a very young girl that I taught in school, Honorable Speaker, in my life teaching station. A young girl called Mercy in Diwa town was murdered in the middle of the night. And we've had those stories every day. Some of them published even in the dailies. Honorable Speaker, this will be an opportunity to take our people through cautionary measures. The county government, the officials, even the national government officials will have an opportunity and structures in which they can progressively take our young girls into certain ways in which they can protect themselves, certain ways in which they are able to smell there's danger around them. And Honorable Speakers have said education is an ongoing exercise. Honorable Speaker, you remember when we had the NADCO discussions, and I want to really congratulate our two leaders, the president of this country, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and the enigma, Honorable Raila Molo Odinga, who took an opportunity to just say, let us forget about the chaos and let's sit together. And they put up a team of leaders from the Senate and the National Assembly that brought about the NADCO report. But Honorable Speaker, as we talk about the NADCO report, are we sure the general population that we have in this country are aware of the details, the nitty-gritties that we discussed in the NADCO report? So in this bill, we would be having a way of letting our people know some of those topical issues that we discuss as leaders that affect their lives. Honorable Speaker, in most of the conversations I have with my community and with the public, there are always issues coming up about IBC. When are commissioners coming in? When are we getting our boundaries reviewed? When are we getting the preparation of even the next election, Honorable Speaker? I'm saying because these are topical issues that always come up. I support this bill because through this bill, some of these topical issues would be related to our people. Honorable Speaker, I'm also happy that this bill mentions that public officials, be they national and county, at county level, will undergo a mandatory civic and training on their roles and responsibilities. Honorable Speaker, a number of people get to positions, some of them even elected, some of them appointed, some of them nominated like some of us. But sometimes it is pathetic that you see that the way some of us undertake their roles, it is like they are never very sure of the responsibilities for which they are in those offices. Honorable Speaker, it is even a pity that when you go back to our counties, there are even leaders who are being sought by their electorates. They never see the leaders that represent them. We do not know whether they go back to their communities or their homes at night, and during the day they are not available because their people are always looking for them. Honorable Speaker, if I refer to the elected leaders are representatives of the people. And they must go back to their electorates. They must go back to their people. And their people who elect leaders must be told through civic education about the roles they are bestowing on some of the officers they are electing to offices. So whether they are appointed or they are elected, Honorable Speaker, they must be. I'm happy they will be undergoing a mandatory civic education and training so that they are enlightened more on some of their responsibilities. And the people, our people must also know some of the mandates the leaders have so that when they're not able to perform those mandates well, then the voters or our people should be able to know what they will do with them in future. Honorable Speaker, another point why I support this vibrant bill is that it talks about the registration of county education providers. And Honorable Speaker, it goes ahead to mention that some of the county civic education providers are not limited to NGOs, non-governmental NGOs, organizations. Some of them are non-state actors. Honorable Speaker, why do you say it is important to have a registration of these civic education providers? It is the right, our right to know who is providing which activity where. Sometimes back, Honorable Speaker, when I happened to have been incorporated as a woman leader in a structure of government that was overseeing development in my region, Honorable Speaker, we came up with an idea that in Homa Bay district then, we needed to know who is coming in and what are you coming to do. But it was a pity, Honorable Speaker, that most of these NGOs and non-state actors did not even want the government to know what they are doing and where they are doing it. Honorable Speaker, if I go ahead to give an example of my district then, you have often been informed that in Homa Bay, our prevalence level in HIV or early pregnancy of gender-based violence is so high, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, it is a pity that because of these statistics, we end up attracting so many NGOs and non-state actors that come with a lot of funding to address these issues. But what is a pity, Honorable Speaker, is we remain with the same statistic despite the fact that we have so many NGOs and so many non-state actors that are addressing this issue. So the question that worries some of us as leaders is that what are they doing? Is it adding value? Is it just about using the statistic to seek for funds elsewhere? Is it just about after you get funds as an NGO, then you come to the region and that you masquerade as if you're doing some activities, but it doesn't translate to any value for our people. Honorable Speaker, we have often been worried about some NGOs where they get funding, but a number of this funding goes to administrative issues. And that is why I applaud this bill, because it's going to let us have an inventory of who you are, what activities you are doing, where you are doing it, and I would like us to go further. We must have targets for these NGOs and non-state actors wherever they come. Honorable Speaker, the bill also goes ahead to talk about that there will be a registry of providers that will be kept. That reflects on what I'm saying, that we need to know who you are, and go even ahead to talk about the amount which you have, and how much are you going to expend on that activity. Honorable Okenyuri, it will not only be enough that we'll be having NGOs and non-state actors coming to our regions to provide for civic education, but we must also have their budgets. Those must be public, the public know-how, so that we are able to decide whether they are giving us value for money. Honorable Speaker, the bill will even help us support our people into knowing what are the devolved functions that they are entitled to. What are the services that they are entitled to? Honorable Speaker, we've had this fear that functions sometimes were devolved from the national government, but they were re-centralized again at the county headquarters. We would like our people to know that it is their right to get those devolved functions, that those functions were devolved from the national government, and they should further be devolved to the sub-counties and to the wards, so that our people access services and not run back for services back to the county headquarters. And this bill is going to support that. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, why I support this bill is that this bill even refers to the Bill of Rights. The rights to association, the rights to assemble, the rights to demonstrate, the right for labor relations. Honorable Speaker, this is a very noble bill, and all of us should support it, and the whole country should support it. It will have saved us a lot from the lack of knowledge of the rights of our people who cry or suffer because they lack knowledge of certain things that they are entitled to. The Constitution that we have talks about all these rights. Honorable Speaker, we are here as representatives of the people. And so we must ensure that our people have knowledge. I therefore support this bill, and I want to call upon all my colleagues in the Senate to support this bill, so that our people have a right to education, which I've stated is an ongoing activity and never stops, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when devolution was coming in 2010, after voting, there was a lapse of a period in which the national government had a duty even to give civic education on devolution. But Honorable Speaker, you and me know, and all of us know, that this never happened effectively and efficiently, and it is for that reason that our people are still suffering for lack of knowledge. Honorable Speaker, I support the County Civic Education Bill 2024 as moved by Senator Esther Okenyuri.
Senator Beatrice, thank you for your contribution to this bill. And honorable senators, there being no other member who is wishing to contribute, I call upon Senator Esther Okenyuri, the mover of this bill, to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity again. At this point, I first want to start by appreciating Senator Boni Halwale, the Kakamega Senator, who seconded my bill. And I also want to appreciate Senator Faki, the Mombasa senator. I heard you well and clear, and you quite understand what we are talking about when I actually passionately speak about why we need to have informed citizens. Senator Mariam, my neighbor right here, Senator Murgo, the West Pokot senator, Senator Cherargei, who has passionately spoken about my attributes. I'm very honored by those kind words, the Nandi senator, much appreciations. Senator Beatrice Ogola, my colleague, and one who's always very supportive anytime we have such proposals in the House. I'm so grateful that you had to sit to this time to support the Civic Education Bill, and that shows your commitment to having people who understand their responsibilities and how they need to take account the kind of leaders they elect to office. I equally thought Senator Mungatana would have time to comment on this, but I think he ran short of that. But I wish to appreciate all colleagues, because when I first brought this proposal, I brought it as a statement. Most members gave ideas that we need you to come up with a legal proposal. And I went back, and this is what we have, and we keep furnishing it so that we have a product which is going to make sense to we elected members, to members of the public. But at the end of the day, we agree that we need members or citizens who are informed, so that no one is going to take advantage of an ordinary member down in Nyamakima or Nyamarambe or Kenyanya or Mombasa or Kisauni. These people need to be informed before they make any decisions. Mr. Speaker, currently what we have, sometimes public participation happens, but you're calling people to participate on a subject they do not understand. And that's why when something is brought to a particular area, people think it's actually a favor, whereas they deserve that particular service or that particular good. So, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't want to actually speak more than my colleagues have mentioned, and I've spoken about this from times back, and I keep emphasizing on this. Even this evening, I want to make a plea to the media fraternity. These are some of the proposals we need to highlight in the media, because they are shaping conversations positively. Right now in this century, young people are sharing their opinions on social media, either by retweeting on X, by sharing on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on TikTok. That's where conversations are currently happening. So to the media fraternity, I want to request that you highlight this is a very progressive proposal, which is equally going to help you curb misinformation and also pass positive information that is building people in one way or another. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to request that pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I want to request that the putting of the question be deferred to another day so that that can be carried on. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I end at that point.
Pursuant to Standing Order 63, putting of the question is deferred to the next sitting of the House. Honorable Senators, having directed that we defer the putting of the question on the order number 12, that is the County Civic Education Bill, Senate Bills number 4 of 2024, I further direct that order number 13, order number 14, order number 15, number 16, 17, 18, and 19 are deferred to the next sitting of this House. And now, honorable members, we may rise. Honorable Senators, there being no other business on the order paper,
The Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, 18th of February 2025 at 2:30 p.m.